What if I were to inform you that, at times, a significant number of our school teachers tend to engage in dishonest practices during school hours? Pay close attention as this narrative imparts crucial lessons for parents regarding the importance of reviewing their child's books after school. Once upon a time, in the vibrant and bustling state of Anra, there existed a primary school situated in the heart of a tranquil neighborhood. This institution was known as Sunshine Primary School. It boasted a spacious compound adorned with mango trees along the side, and each morning, the melodious voices of children could be heard singing the national anthem and reciting their morning prayers prior to entering their classrooms. The school had established a reputation in the area as an exemplary institution. Parents from various streets would enroll their children there, having heard of the teachers' dedication and the consistently positive outcomes. Mothers and fathers would rise early, press their children's uniforms, prepare their lunches, and joyfully escort them to the school gate each morning, confident that their children were in capable hands. Within this school, there was a teacher named Miss Chum. Miss Chum was not a newcomer. She had been part of the school for many years. She was well acquainted with every nook and cranny of the institution. She was aware of which classroom had a broken window, the precise moment the bell would ring, and she recognized each child by name. She was one of those educators whom the school administration held in high regard. When visitors arrived to evaluate the school, Miss Chum was consistently among the teachers they selected to present, as she dressed impeccably, communicated effectively, and embodied the essence of a true professional. Parents held her in high esteem. During Parent-Teacher Association meetings, commonly referred to as PTA meetings, they would greet her warmly, saying, "Ah, Miss Chuma, my child speaks of you daily at home. Thank you for your exceptional teaching." In response, Miss Chuma would smile, nod her head and reply, "It is my pleasure. Your children are truly wonderful." She appeared exceptionally kind, deeply committed, and utterly sincere. However, hidden beneath that cheerful demeanor, beneath the elegant attire and charming words, lay a very dark secret that Miss Chum concealed. You see, Miss Chum had a daughter named Ada. Ada was enrolled in Miss Chum's own class, which was already a situation that the school should have approached with greater caution, yet at the time, no one raised any concerns. People merely remarked, "Oh, that is the teacher's daughter. She is fortunate to have her mother as her instructor." However, Ada was not particularly bright, and that marked the onset of numerous issues. Ada was a sweet girl in her own right. She was not a troublesome child. She enjoyed playing, laughing, and drawing pictures in her notebook when the teacher's gaze was elsewhere. Yet, when it came to reading, solving basic math problems, or answering questions in English or fundamental science, Ada faced significant challenges. She would gaze at the paper, chew on her pencil, and write responses that were often nonsensical. She was the type of child who required additional attention, extra lessons, and a great deal of patience and time to grasp concepts effectively. There is nothing inherently wrong with that. Every child learns at their own pace. Some children are quick learners, while others take their time, and both can achieve success in life if they receive proper guidance. A good teacher, a true educator, would have recognized this and discreetly provided Ada with extra lessons, devoted more time to explaining concepts, encouraged her, and allowed her to develop at her own pace. However, Miss Chum was not thinking like a good teacher. Instead, she was thinking like a proud and anxious woman overly concerned about public perception. She constantly worried about what others would say if they discovered that she was a teacher, a class instructor, and that her own daughter was struggling in her class. What would the other teachers think? What would the parents say? What would the principal say? They would mock her. They would claim she could not even teach her own child. They will claim that I am an ineffective teacher. That fear, that pride, that shame, it resided in her chest, and it expanded and expanded until it transformed into something quite grotesque. It morphed into greed. It evolved into malevolence. And gradually, silently, without informing anyone, Miss Chman resolved to make a choice that would impact many lives. She opted to deceive. The initial instance came and went. The children completed their examinations. They handed in their papers. And Miss Chum found herself alone at her desk in the staff room after school hours, grading the papers one by one. When she reached Ada's paper, she would alter the details. She would erase items with her correction fluid or simply rewrite the scores in the record book with altered figures. Where Ada might have scored 30 out of 100, she would record 70. Where another student should have secured first place, she would rearrange the numbers and position Ada at the top. First place. That was the honor she bestowed upon her daughter, first place. Each time, whether Ada merited it or not, when the results were announced, Ada was in first place. Parents praised Miss Toma. "Your daughter is exceptionally talented, just like her mother," they remarked. Miss Toma smiled and replied, "Thank you. Thank you. We are grateful to God." Yet internally she was aware of the reality. She recognized that those figures were fabrications. She understood her daughter had not earned that ranking. However, she reassured herself that it was acceptable. She convinced herself it was a minor issue. She promised herself she would cease after this term. She assured herself she would put in more effort with Ada and assist her in genuinely improving. She did not cease. The second term arrived and the same scenario unfolded. Ada took her exams. Ada did not perform well, and Miss Toma sat alone in that staff room, altering the numbers once more. Ada achieved first place again and again. Parents applauded, teachers acknowledged, and the school administration commended Ada as an exemplary student. Within the classroom, some children began to sense that something was amiss. A boy named Adai was aware that he had performed exceptionally well in his mathematics examination. He had reviewed each answer twice. He had even articulated his reasoning clearly. However, when the results were announced, he found himself in third place. He returned home feeling perplexed and told his mother, "Mommy, I believed I performed well." His mother shrugged and replied, "Perhaps someone else excelled. Study harder next time." Adai, being merely a young child, accepted this and moved forward. This scenario was common among many children. They were young. They trusted their teacher and had no reason to suspect that the adult before them was deceiving them. Thus, they simply accepted their results and returned home. Yet, every falsehood has a time limit. Now let us discuss the third term, as this is where changes began to unfold. At the start of the third term, a new student entered the class. Her name was Nora. Nora had recently relocated to Anra from another town with her family. Her father had received a new job assignment, necessitating the family's move. Nora was no stranger to changing schools, as this was not the first time her family had relocated. However, Nora was the type of child who adapted swiftly wherever she went because she possessed something incredibly powerful within her: brilliance. From the moment she could grasp a pencil, Nora had a passion for learning. She adored books. She cherished numbers. She enjoyed reading stories, answering questions, and understanding how things functioned. In her previous school, throughout every single class from primary 1 until her departure, Nora had consistently achieved first place. Every term, without exception. Her teachers would boast about her to visiting educators from other institutions. "Look at this girl. She never misses a question," they would exclaim. Now Nora entered Miss Chilmer's class in her pristine uniform, with her new school bag slung over her shoulder and her lunchbox in hand. She quietly took her seat and began to learn. Nora's mother, affectionately known in their neighborhood as Mama Nora. Mama Nora was not the type of mother who merely dropped her child off at school and then forgot about everything. No, she was what one might refer to as a highly engaged mother. She was the kind of woman who was fully aware of the subjects being taught in school each week. Every evening, she would sit down with Nora at the dining table to review the day's lessons together. She meticulously checked every piece of homework, not just to confirm its completion, but to ascertain whether Nora genuinely grasped the material. She would peruse Nora's notebooks, read her written assignments, and pose questions aloud. "Nora, what is the capital of Nigeria?" "Abuja, Mommy. Good girl. And who is the founder of our school?" "Mommy, that one is in our social studies book. Let me go and check." They would share laughter. It was a wonderful bond between mother and daughter. Mama Nora firmly believed that a mother who does not pay attention is quietly failing her child. Therefore, she remained vigilant. She paid very close attention. When Nora transitioned to the new school, Mama Nora took the initiative to meet Miss Chioma personally on visiting day. She introduced herself, inquired about the curriculum, asked how the class was organized, and told Miss Chioma, "Please take care of my daughter. She loves to learn. If she is doing anything incorrectly, please inform me directly, and I will address it at home." Miss Chum smiled and replied, "Of course, madam. Your daughter is very welcome here." What Miss Chum was unaware of at that moment was that Mama Nora would be observing very closely from that day onward. The situation progressed, and Nora quickly emerged as one of the most exceptional students in the class. Even Miss Chuma, in her innermost thoughts, could not deny this. When questions were posed in class, Nora's hand shot up immediately. When assignments were given, Nora's the work produced was consistently neat and accurate. While other children were still grappling with understanding a subject, Nora had already grasped it and was quietly advancing in her reading. The other children held Nora in high regard. She exhibited neither arrogance nor pride. Instead, she was warm and approachable. During break time, she would assist her classmates in comprehending various concepts. Nora was the type of student who enhanced the quality of the class simply by her presence. However, Miss Choma observed all of this with an increasing sense of unease, as she was acutely aware that when the exam arrived, Nora was destined to secure the top position. This was evident to her. Nora's brilliance, consistency, and preparedness made it impossible for anyone to genuinely surpass her. Consequently, this implied that Ada would not achieve the first position. This also meant that discussions would arise, potentially leading to the exposure of her secret. Thus, Miss Choma resolved early on, well before the exams commenced. She had already made a decision in her heart regarding her course of action. She intended to continue her previous conduct. She planned to manipulate the results. She would assign Ada the first position once more and allocate a lower rank to Nora to avoid any suspicion. She did not contemplate the repercussions. She did not consider the child she was harming. She did not reflect on justice, fairness, or what was morally right. Her thoughts were solely centered on herself. The promotion examination approached. This was not merely any test. It was the final examination of the academic year. This assessment would determine the class each child would advance to in the subsequent year. Known as the promotion exam, it was taken very seriously by every student. On the days of the exams, children arrived early, their faces revealing their anxiety. Some were quietly reciting last-minute facts to themselves. Others were eating their breakfast in silence, gazing into the distance as they mentally reviewed their knowledge. Mothers at the school gate were offering last-minute advice. Do not rush. Carefully read the question before providing your answer. Review your work upon completion. Nora remained composed. Mama Nora had adequately prepared her. They had dedicated the weeks leading up to the exam to thoroughly reviewing every subject. This included English language, mathematics, basic science, social studies, civic education, verbal reasoning, and quantitative reasoning, every single one. Mama Nora would create small mock exams for Nora at home and evaluate them herself. Nora consistently excelled in these assessments. On the day of the exam, Mama Nora cupped Nora's face in her hands before she entered the school grounds and said, "Nora, I want you to go in there and write everything you know. Do not be afraid. Do not rush. Just be yourself, for being yourself is more than sufficient." Nora nodded, smiled, and proceeded inside. Once seated, Nora received her exam papers and began her work. She approached each paper with the confidence of a child who understood precisely what she was doing. In mathematics, she tackled each problem methodically, clearly demonstrating her calculations. In English language, she accurately answered every comprehension question, and her essay was well organized. In basic science, she responded to every question with precision. Across all subjects, Nora wrote diligently and effectively. After completing the exams, Nora exited the classroom feeling accomplished. She experienced the satisfaction that accompanies hard work and its visible results. That afternoon, she returned home feeling quietly content. Miss Chman now possessed all the exam papers. She found herself alone in the staff room that evening after the other teachers had departed. She laid the papers out on the desk and began the grading process. Upon reaching Nora's papers, she graded them with integrity, as she needed to ascertain the true scores before making any adjustments. As she graded, her pace slowed, for Nora had not only passed every subject but had achieved exceptionally high marks. In mathematics, she had nearly answered everything correctly, and in English, she excelled in every subject. Nora's paper was indicative of a child who was undoubtedly the best in that class. Miss Choma examined those papers for an extended period. Subsequently, she turned her attention to Ada's papers. Although Ada had made an effort, her performance was lacking. Ada had faced difficulties with numerous questions, just as she consistently did. A prolonged silence enveloped the staff room. Outside, the evening birds were chirping in the mango trees. The security guard was patrolling the compound. In the distance, a generator was humming, prompting Miss Choma to reaffirm her decision. She took her pen, adjusted the scores, recorded in the logbook that Ada was in first position, and noted that Nora was in third position. She gathered her belongings into her bag, locked the staff room, and headed home. When the results were announced, students entered the classroom individually to collect their report cards. There was a mix of excitement and tears. Some children leaped with joy, while others gazed at their cards in disappointment. Ada received her card, confirming her first position once more. Nora received her card, indicating third position. She examined the card closely. After a moment, she was not the type of child to throw tantrums or create disturbances. She was composed. However, there was a glimmer in her eyes that suggested confusion, as she had performed well. She had felt confident while writing. She had sensed it in her heart. How could she be in third place? She carefully folded the card and placed it in her school bag. She returned home. That evening, when Mama Nora sat down with Nora to review the results, everything shifted. Mama Nora opened the report card and read it. She read it again. She set it down on the table, picked it up, and read it a third time. Then she looked at Nora. "Nora, what transpired during this exam?" Nora replied, "Mommy, I did well. I answered everything. I reviewed my work." Mama Nora sat in silence for a moment, reflecting on all those evenings spent at the dining table. She reflected on all the mock exams that Nora had successfully completed at home. She recalled how she had meticulously reviewed each subject with her daughter. She considered the fact that in every school Nora had attended, she had consistently achieved the top position. And something within Mamura whispered, No, this cannot be right." Mamura was not the type of woman to remain silent when something was amiss. She was neither aggressive nor rude, but she was resolute. She had a strong belief in justice. She held that if something wrong occurred, one should not remain passive at home but should seek the truth. She rose from her chair. "Nora, get dressed. We are heading to that school immediately." They arrived at the school that very evening. The gate was still open as some staff members were present, completing end-of-term tasks. Mama Nora walked directly to the principal's office. Her steps were steady, yet her heart was aflame. The principal's name was Mr. Okafo. He was a large man with reading glasses perched at the tip of his nose. Generally, he was a reasonable individual, but he was also the type who preferred to avoid trouble and was reluctant to acknowledge any issues within his school. Mama Nora greeted him, took a seat, and placed Nora's report card on his desk. She detailed the situation, explaining Nora's history of being first in her previous school. She informed him that she had personally prepared Nora for this examination. She expressed her concerns that something was amiss and requested that the records be reviewed. Mr. Okafo leaned back in his chair, removed his glasses, and rubbed his face. He was already fatigued from the end-of-term workload. The last thing he desired was a parent in his office making accusations. He replied, "Madam, I appreciate your concern, but this is a reputable school. Our teachers are professionals. It is possible that your daughter found this school more challenging than her previous one. Perhaps the standards here are higher. It is possible that there are other exceptional students in the class. You should take pride in the fact that she arrived prepared. This situation remains favorable." Mama Nora remained steadfast. She stated, "Sir, with all due respect, I will not leave this office until I have access to the records. I wish to review my daughter's graded exam papers. I want to see the scores. Please show me. If I am mistaken, I will apologize and depart. But I need to see them." Although her voice was not raised, it carried a quiet intensity that indicated to Mr. Okafor that this woman was entirely serious. Mr. Okafor regarded her for a brief moment. He then exhaled, picked up his phone, and dialed Miss Chum. "Miss Chum, please come to my office immediately and bring the class performance records along with the exam papers." There was a brief silence on the line before Miss Chum responded, "Yes, sir, I am on my way." Upon entering the office, Miss Chum noticed Mama Nora seated there, and a sense of dread filled her chest. Although her hands were steady for the moment, she anticipated they would soon tremble. She greeted everyone and set the files on the principal's desk. Mr. Oliver opened the record book and began reviewing the scores. He verified Nora's name. He examined the exam papers attached to the records. He assessed the scores for each subject. The atmosphere in the room was extremely quiet. Suddenly, Mr. Oliver paused. He scrutinized Nora's exam papers. He compared the scores recorded in the book next to Nora's name with those beside Ada's name. He continued to review the exam papers of other students until he located Ada's actual exam papers. Something was profoundly amiss. Nora's papers clearly indicated that she had answered nearly all questions correctly. The marks on the actual papers were high, yet the scores documented in the book next to her name were disappointingly low. Conversely, Ada's papers, when evaluated honestly, revealed that she had not achieved a sufficient score to place first, yet the records indicated that Ada was in first place. Mr. Okafor completely removed his glasses at this point. He set them down on the desk. He looked at Miss Chum. He examined the papers. He glanced at Miss Chum once more. Miss Chum was trembling. Mr. Okafor spoke in a very soft and measured tone. Miss Chum, could you clarify this for me? Silence ensued. Miss Chum, the scores recorded on this child's paper do not correspond with what is documented in this record book. How did this discrepancy occur? Silence lingered. Mama Nora directed her gaze towards Miss Chum. Nora, who had been quietly seated in the corner, also looked at Miss Chum. Miss Chum opened her mouth to speak but then closed it again. Her eyes glistened with tears. She averted her gaze to the floor. Mr. Okafor gradually rose from his chair. He was a large man, and his presence filled the room as he stood. He declared, Nora's result will be amended immediately. She holds the first position in this class. He turned to Mama Nora and stated, Madam, I sincerely apologize on behalf of this institution. This situation should never have occurred. Your daughter is indeed in first position, and her result will be rectified, with a new report card issued today. Mama Nora regarded him for a prolonged moment before nodding slowly. She took Nora's hand and grasped it firmly. Thank you, she murmured softly. She stood up, adjusted her clothing, and exited the office with her daughter, her head held high. However, the narrative did not conclude there. After Mama Nora departed, Mr. Okafor shut the door to his office and fixed his gaze on Miss Chuma for an extended period. Then he took a significant action. He convened an emergency staff meeting. That evening, every teacher at the school was summoned to the staff room. Once they were all seated, Mr. Okafor placed Miss Chuma's record books on the table. Not just the records for the third term, but all of them. First term, second term, and third term. He addressed the assembled teachers saying, I want everyone in this room to examine what I have discovered. The teachers began to review the records one by one, and as they delved deeper, their expressions shifted. This was not merely about Nora. It concerned numerous children. Child after child, term after term, scores had been altered. Children who were meant to be in the top position had been relegated. Conversely, those who should have failed were elevated. A long-standing pattern that had been quietly occurring was now exposed on that table for all to witness. One teacher, an elderly woman named Mrs. Adaz, who had dedicated 20 years to that school, rose and directed her finger at Miss Chum, exclaiming, Coma, how could you do this? These are children. They placed their trust in you. Their parents placed their trust in you. We placed our trust in you. At that moment, Miss Chum was in tears. However, her tears failed to elicit sympathy from anyone, as tears shed after being caught differ significantly from those of true remorse. Another teacher remarked, You have sullied the name of this school. After all the years we have invested in building the reputation of this institution, you were here engaged in this disgraceful conduct. One by one, the teachers voiced their opinions. Some expressed anger, while others were profoundly disappointed. As educators, they understood the significance of a child earning their position through honest means. They recognized the impact on a child's confidence, development, and self-perception when they were falsely praised for brilliance. They also understood the injustice faced by those children who were deprived of their rightful achievements. Mr. Okafo allowed them to express their thoughts. Then he rose to deliver his decision. Miss Chum was to vacate the school immediately. Her employment was terminated. She was expelled from Sunshine Primary School, and her case would be reported to the state teaching authority for further action. That night, Miss Chum exited the staff room without her job, her dignity, and the respect of everyone who had once admired her. The news spread rapidly. You know how information circulates in communities. By the following morning, conversations were taking place in the market, at the water-fetching spot, at the bus stop, and outside the church gate. Have you heard what transpired at Sunshine Primary School? The teacher, known as Miss Chuma, has been accused of altering results for many years. Her own daughter was present in the classroom, and she was cheating on her behalf. Such wickedness was met with divine retribution. It was Mama Nora, the mother of a new girl, who uncovered the truth. She went to the school and did not rest until everything was thoroughly examined. We are grateful for a mother like her. The community experienced a range of emotions. Anger, certainly, but also sorrow as they reflected on all the children over the years who had received incorrect results and were unaware of why their genuine efforts had gone unacknowledged. Nora returned home that evening with a revised report card, showing first position, the rank she had rightfully earned. Mama Nora proudly framed that report card and displayed it on the wall of their living room. It was not merely a school result, it symbolized something greater. It represented integrity. It embodied the strength of a mother who would not tolerate injustice. It signified a young girl who acted rightly and whose actions were ultimately acknowledged. On the final day of the school term, when Nora's name was announced as the overall best student during the end-of-year assembly, the entire school applauded her and Nora stood tall, smiling. It was the kind of smile that arises only when one truly knows they have earned their success. The tale of Miss Chuma and Nora became one of those narratives shared within the Anamra community for many years. Mothers recounted it to their daughters. Educators discussed it during professional development workshops. It served as a reminder that no matter how clever a deception may be, or how long it persists, the truth has a way of emerging. Additionally, it highlighted another crucial lesson. It underscored the significance of a parent who remains vigilant. Mama Nora did not possess any extraordinary power, connections, or wealth. She was simply a woman who observed, who verified, who cared deeply, and who refused to accept that a falsehood could be deemed correct. Consequently, justice was served. Lesson: if every parent emulated Mama Nora a bit more and every teacher was more forthright about their genuine role, which is to nurture children with honesty rather than using them to safeguard their own self-esteem, the world would be significantly more equitable. Ultimately, a child's outcome is not a reflection of the teacher's standing. It pertains to the child's future. No parent, no teacher, and no degree of pride or shame should ever obstruct a child from attaining the future they rightfully deserve.